Story number 1. The Vanishing Man of Black Hollow. There's a place deep in the Appalachian Mountains that locals call Black Hollow. You won't find it on any tourist map, and most people who grew up nearby don't even like talking about it. It's one of those places where nature feels wrong. The air's too still. The trees seem to lean in just a little closer, and even the birds avoid flying over it. In 2004, a man named Earl Whitmore, a 42-year-old logger from a small town in Western Virginia, vanished in those woods. Earl wasn't the kind of man to get lost easily. He'd worked in the mountains his entire life. But what makes his disappearance terrifying isn't that he went missing. It's what they found after. According to locals, Earl had taken a weekend job cutting timber in an isolated patch of forest near Black Hollow. He told his wife, Marlene, that he'd be gone only one night. He never came back. The next morning, his truck was found parked by the trailhead, keys still in the ignition, driver's door wide open. The sheriff's department launched a search. Bloodhounds, rescue teams, even helicopters. They combed through every inch of that forest, but Earl had simply vanished. 3 days later, the dogs picked up his scent near an old abandoned church deep in the woods. Locals said that church had been there since the late 1800s, built by a group of settlers who disappeared not long after moving in there. It was nothing but a rotting shell now, its steeple half collapsed and the inside filled with mold, dead leaves, and the faint smell of something rotten. When the deputies entered, they found Earl's backpack propped against the wall beside the pulpit. Inside was his lunch, untouched, and a small tape recorder, the kind used by journalists or hunters to record notes. It was still working. When they pressed play, they heard Earl's voice. "If anyone finds this, I don't know what's happening out here. I can hear something walking outside the tent. It's not a bear. It's too quiet when it moves. It just stands there sometimes, breathing, slow. I saw lights in the trees last night. They weren't flashlights. They floated." The recording cuts off with a faint sound, a dragging noise, followed by what sounded like a man whispering. But the voice wasn't Earl's. After that, the recorder went silent. The search team found no footprints, no signs of a struggle, nothing. But the sheriff later admitted, off record, that he found something else behind the church. About 30 yards from the back door, the ground looked freshly disturbed, like something had been buried. When they dug a little, they found an old wooden box, hand-carved, no nails, just fitted planks. Inside was an animal skull wrapped in cloth, with markings burned into it. The sheriff ordered everyone to stop digging. A few days later, the official search was quietly shut down. The report claimed Earl had likely succumbed to the elements. But the locals didn't buy it. They say Black Hollow takes people. And if you listen closely at night near the tree line, you can still hear footsteps circling the old church. In 2012, 8 years later, a pair of hikers went missing in the same area. Search teams found their campsite torn apart, gear scattered, and one of their cell phones still recording video. The footage showed them whispering inside their tent around midnight, both looking terrified. One of them says, "Do you hear that breathing?" Then the camera shakes violently and cuts off. The footage was never released publicly, but one of the rescue volunteers leaked a description online. He said the last frame before it went black showed a pale figure standing outside the tent. Tall, thin, and completely still. Its face looked human, but not quite right. The eyes were too dark, and its mouth was open wider than it should have been. After that incident, the area around Black Hollow was closed off to the public. The Forest Service blamed unstable terrain and dangerous wildlife. But locals say no one goes there anymore, not even hunters. They say Earl's voice can still be heard on quiet nights, echoing through the trees. It's watching me. And if you ever camp anywhere near Black Hollow, you'll hear the same thing that everyone who's gone missing heard first. A slow, deep breathing just outside your tent, and the feeling that whatever it is, it's not alone anymore. Story number 2. The Screams Beneath Coldwater Mine. A true Appalachian horror story. Coldwater, West Virginia, a small mining town buried deep in the Appalachian Mountains. These days, it's barely on the map, but back in the 1970s, it was alive. Families, workers, children playing near the coal shafts. Then, one night in 1978, something happened deep underground that shut the mine down forever. The locals still call it the night the mountain screamed. The Coldwater Mine was old, too old. The tunnels stretched for miles under the mountain, twisting through darkness like veins. The company ignored every warning sign: gas leaks, collapsing shafts, strange sounds that workers swore they heard echoing through the rock. Some of the miners said the mountain was alive, that it groaned like a living thing. But nobody listened. In February of 1978, a crew of 12 men went down for a night shift. Only one came back. His name was Frank Dalton, a 33-year-old father of 2. When rescuers found him the next morning, he was crawling out of the tunnel, covered in soot, his eyes wide and bloodshot. He couldn't speak at first, just stared at the rescue team, shaking. When he finally did speak, he said something that chilled everyone. "They're still down there, but don't go looking. It's not them anymore." At first, the sheriff thought it was just trauma from the collapse, but when rescue teams went in, what they found didn't make sense. The tunnels hadn't caved in completely. Some were still open, but the air was heavy, like something had sucked all the oxygen out. They found 4 helmets on the ground, lights still flickering, but no bodies. Just drag marks in the dust leading deeper into the mine, marks that didn't match human footsteps. One rescuer, Bill Turner, later told his wife he heard something moving in the dark, slow, heavy breathing that echoed off the walls. Then he saw what looked like handprints,
but they were wrong. Too long, with deep grooves like claws had dug into the rock. The search was called off 2 days later. The mine was sealed shut. Officially, the company blamed a methane explosion, though no one could explain why there were no burn marks. Frank Dalton never worked again. He moved away, changed his name, and refused to talk about what happened. But in 1984, he contacted a local journalist named Raymond Cole, who was working on a documentary about Appalachian mining disasters. Cole recorded their conversation in a motel room near Charleston. The recording was never aired, but years later, his nephew released it online. Here's what Frank said that night. "It wasn't an explosion. We heard something below the main shaft, like metal scraping. We thought maybe a cave-in. But then we heard the screaming. It wasn't just men. It was like the whole mountain was screaming. Then the lights went out. I saw shadows moving, crawling along the ceiling like spiders. Then something grabbed Harlan, pulled him backward into the dark. I never saw him again." Cole asks what it was, but Frank doesn't answer right away. There's silence on the tape, about 8 seconds. Then Frank whispers, "It was tall, and it knew our names." Cole reportedly stopped recording after that. 3 weeks later, Frank Dalton was found dead in his home, apparent heart failure. He was 39. But here's where it gets worse. The coroner's report mentioned abrasions on his forearms, long parallel marks that looked like he'd been grabbed or restrained. The sheriff's office ruled it natural causes, but Cole's notes from that night tell a different story. He wrote, "Frank said it followed him out." Fast forward to 1992. The mine's sealed entrance was broken open by vandals, a group of teenagers from town who thought it'd be funny to explore the haunted mine. Only 2 came back. They said the same thing Frank had said years before, that something was breathing down there. One of the boys, Eli Roberts, said they heard voices, familiar ones, calling their names from the dark. "It sounded like my dad, but my dad's been dead since I was 8. The sheriff had the mine sealed again, permanently this time. Concrete, steel plates, everything. But for years after, people living near the mountain claimed they could still hear faint metallic bangs echoing through the hills late at night, like someone hammering from underground. In 2003, a hiker named Travis Miller recorded one of those sounds while camping near Coldwater. You can still find the clip online, about 30 seconds long. There's the sound of wind, then a dull rhythmic banging, followed by what sounds unmistakably like a man screaming far below the surface. Experts said it was probably a wild animal. Locals didn't agree. They said the mine was cursed, that something ancient had been unearthed in those tunnels, something that was never supposed to be disturbed. In 2018, a private construction company bought the land around Coldwater Mountain to clear it for development. When they started drilling near the old site, the workers complained about the same thing the miners had: strange noises, deep vibrations, tools going missing overnight. One morning, the foreman found claw marks on the side of a steel barrel, 5 deep gouges that looked like melted into the metal. They quit that same day. Now, Coldwater is a ghost town. No one lives there. No one goes near the mine. But people still report strange lights flickering from the hills after dark. And on still nights, if you stand by the old access road, you can hear it. That slow, dragging sound. And sometimes a voice, faint, echoing through the trees, whispering names that no one's spoken in years. Frank, Harlan, Eli. And if you wait long enough, you'll hear something else. A distant scream, muffled and low, like it's coming from beneath the ground. Locals say that's the sound of the mountain remembering. Others say it's the miners still trapped below, calling for help that will never come. But if you ever visit Coldwater and hear your name whispered in the dark, don't answer, because whatever's down there in that mountain, it already knows who you are.
Story number 3. The Ranger Who Vanished in Red Pine Forest. Red Pine Forest lies deep in the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Tennessee, a thick stretch of woodland that most locals avoid after dark. It's not on any tourist trail, and even the Park Service keeps it quiet. Because in 1999, a park ranger named Daniel Price went missing there. And to this day, no one has found him. But what they did find made the entire department seal that part of the forest forever. Daniel Price was 41, ex-military, disciplined, and one of those rangers who took his job seriously. He'd been assigned to Red Pine for almost 8 years and knew the terrain like the back of his hand. But that summer, hikers started reporting something strange. Guttural screams echoing through the forest at night, like a person crying for help, but with something off about the voice. One hiker described it as too low, too long, like a recording being played backward. Daniel didn't believe in ghosts. He thought maybe someone was injured or messing around. So on August 12, 1999, he volunteered to patrol the area overnight. He signed out a 2-way radio, a flashlight, and his truck, a white Ford Ranger. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. The next morning, his truck was found parked at the Red Pine trailhead. The driver's door was open. The radio inside was still on, but all it played was static, cutting in and out with faint whispers, like someone speaking through the static. Search teams spent days combing the woods. No tracks, no signs of struggle, no blood. Just his flashlight, found lying beside an old wooden footbridge, its bulb still flickering weakly. The batteries had been drained completely, even though they'd been new. Then, on the 4th day, they found something else. About a half-mile from the bridge, under a large pine tree, a search dog started barking like crazy. When the rangers approached, they found a small clearing, almost a perfect circle. Every tree in that circle had its bark stripped off, the ground blackened like it had been burned. In the center was Daniel's hat, folded neatly, placed on a rock. But here's the part no one could explain. The ground beneath that rock was warm, almost like something underneath was still alive. A week later, the investigation was suspended. The official report said environmental disorientation leading to presumed death. But one of the search team members, Ranger Susan Hull, later told a journalist that they'd found more than they reported. She said the night before they ended the search, her team heard someone calling for help deep in the woods. It sounded exactly like Daniel. It was his voice, she said. Same tone, same words. He was yelling, "I'm over here!" But when we followed it, the voice kept moving like it was circling us. When they reached the clearing again, the air turned freezing cold and their radios cut out one by one. They heard heavy footsteps around them, slow, deliberate, but every time they turned, nothing was there. One of the team, a rookie ranger named Pete Collins, started panicking and ran back toward the trail. He didn't make it more than 50 yards before screaming. When they found him, he was shaking uncontrollably, mumbling the same words over and over. It was wearing his face. Pete quit the ranger service the next day. He refused to talk to investigators, but in a private email years later, he wrote something to his brother. "I saw Daniel, but it wasn't Daniel. His skin was gray, stretched too tight. His mouth, it was wrong. He smiled, but the teeth didn't look human." In 2003, a documentary crew tried to film a short piece on Daniel's disappearance. They interviewed locals, including an old hermit who lived about 2 miles from the forest edge. The man told them he used to hear people talking in the woods at night, whole conversations like families laughing, children playing. But when you get close, it all stops. The woods go dead quiet, like they're waiting for you to make a sound. The crew laughed it off until one night, while recording B-roll footage, their camera picked up something in the distance, a tall figure standing between the trees, completely still. They assumed it was a crew member, but until they realized everyone was accounted for. When they zoomed in later, the figure's face was blurry, but if you slowed the footage down, you could see something moving under its skin, like veins shifting. They left the next morning and never came back. Over the next few years, more strange reports came in. Campers hearing their own names whispered at night, hunters finding half-buried ranger badges deep in the dirt, and once, a maintenance worker cleaning out an old ranger station near Red Pine found a cassette tape labeled August 12, 1999. No one knows who left it there, but the audio was chilling. You can find fragments of it online today. It starts with the sound of wind and Daniel's voice. Red Pine checkpoint, 10:42 p.m. Hearing something. Sounds like someone calling out. Gotta check it out. A minute later, light just went out. Switching batteries. Wait, I see movement near the ridge. Not sure what that is. Then a long pause. And finally Daniel's voice again, shaky, almost whispering, "It's me. Don't follow." After that, the recording ends with a sound like breathing, but distorted, mechanical, almost like two people breathing at once. In 2010, the Park Service officially closed Red Pine Forest due to soil instability. But former rangers say the real reason was far more disturbing. They claim that during a geological survey, ground-penetrating radar picked up something unusual beneath the clearing.
a large hollow cavity about 40 feet below the surface. The shape didn't match natural caves. It looked constructed. But when they tried to dig, their equipment kept malfunctioning. Drills stopped working. Cameras shut off instantly. After 2 days, they gave up. That same night, one of the workers went missing from his motel room. The only thing left behind was his boots, muddy and covered in pine needles. Today, red pine is completely off limits. Fences, warning signs, motion sensors. The government claims it's for environmental restoration, but locals know better. They say on cold nights, if you park near the forest gate, your radio picks up a faint signal on Channel 9, Daniel's old patrol frequency. And if you listen closely, you can still hear his voice crackling through the static. "I'm over here," followed by silence, and then the sound of footsteps approaching, slow and heavy, right behind you.